Okay, so I'm going to start off the lesson today reading you a story that you may have heard before. This story is called The Hare and the Tortoise. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. A hare was continually poking fun at a tortoise because of the slowness of his pace. The tortoise tried not to be annoyed by the jeers of the hare. But one day, in the presence of the other animals, he was goaded into challenging the hare to a foot race. "Why, this is a joke," said the hare. "You know that I can run circles around you." "Enough of your boasting," said the tortoise. "Let's get on with the race." So the course was set by the animals, and the fox was chosen as judge. He gave a sharp bark, and the race was on. Almost before you could say scat, the hare was out of sight. The tortoise plodded along at his usual unhurried pace. After a time, the hare stopped to wait for the tortoise to come along. He waited for a long, long time until he began to get sleepy. "I'll just take a quick nap here in this soft grass, and then in the cool of the day I'll finish the race." So he lay down and closed his eyes. Meanwhile, the tortoise plodded on. He passed the sleeping hare and was approaching the finish line when the hare awoke with a start. It was too late to save the race. Much ashamed, he crept away while all the animals at the finish line acclaimed the winner. So, have you heard this story before?
Yes.
Well, did you know that this story is called a fable?
No.
So I bet you're wondering what a fable is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, a fable is a fictional genre in literature, and it includes animals and plants and mystical creatures that have human qualities. So they can speak and they act like humans. And the main reason for fables is to have the characters lead you to an interpretation of a moral lesson. So when you read a fable, you're supposed to gather a moral lesson from it.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think the moral lesson is in The Hare and the Tortoise?
Do not boast. Be humble.
Yeah. So here it says, slow and steady wins the race, and I'm sure you've heard that saying before. So you got that. So I'm going to read one more to you, and then we're going to think about what the moral is of this fable. That way you can get a better idea of what fables are like, okay? Okay, the hawk and the pigeons. A hawk long had his eye on a flock of pigeons, but no matter how often he had swooped down upon them from the sky, they always had been able to reach their cote in safety. Thinking that it might be his shadow they had spied, he waited for a cloudy day for his next attack, but still to no avail. At length, the hungry hawk decided to use craft instead of attack. From the top of a nearby dead tree, he called down to the pigeons, "Why do you prefer this life of constant fear and anxiety, when if you would make me your king, I could patrol the sky and make you safe from any attack that could be made upon you?" The foolish pigeons, believing the hawk's interest in their welfare to be sincere, called him to the throne as their king and protector. But no sooner was he established there than he issued an order that every day one pigeon would have to be sacrificed for his dinner. So what do you think the main idea is in this fable?
The predator preying on the weak, and he's cunning.
Yes, that's a good word. So did you take away anything from this fable? I know for me, I thought about, kind of reminds me, like, as an American, we get to pick our president. We get to vote for president. And it kind of makes me think that if I were to pick someone as president and I voted them in, and they became president, and then they became a tyrant, which is someone who has full power over people, and the president started to do things that were really bad and things that nobody wanted and unconstitutional, exactly, then that would be my fault. That would be my ignorance, because I didn't take the time to think about who I was voting in as my leader.
Yeah.
So that's the moral of this story. It says they who voluntarily put themselves under the power of a tyrant deserve whatever fate they receive. Okay, so now I'm going to have you read a fable out loud, and then we're going to do an activity with it, okay? So this fable is called The Miller, His Son, and Their Donkey. Okay.
A miller and his son were driving their donkey to a neighboring fair to sell him. They had not gone far when they met a group of girls returning from town, laughing and talking together. "Look there," cried one of them. "Do you ever see such fools? To be trudging along the road on foot when they ought to be riding." So the man put the boy up on the donkey, and they went on their way. Presently, they came upon to a group of old men in earnest debate. "There," said one of them, "that proves exactly what I was saying. No one pays any respect to old age in these days. Look at that idle young rogue riding, while his poor old father has to walk. Get down, you lazy lout, and let the old man rest his weary limbs." The miller made his son dismount and got on the donkey's back in his place, and in this manner they proceeded along the way until they met a company of women and children. "Why, shame on you, lazy bones," they cried. "How can you ride while that poor little lad can hardly keep up with you?" The good miller, wishing to please, took up his son to sit behind him. But just as they reached the edge of the village, a townsman called out to them, "I have a good mind to report you to the authorities for overloading that poor beast so shamelessly. You big hulking fellows should better be able to carry that donkey than the other way around." Is there more?
Mm-hmm.
If I can turn the page. So, alighting, the miller and his son tied the beast's legs together, and with a pole across their shoulders, carried the donkey over the bridge that led to the town. This was such an entertaining sight to the townsfolk that crowds came out to laugh at it. The poor animal, frightened by the uproar, began to struggle to free himself. In the midst of the turmoil, the ass slipped off the pole and over the rail of the bridge into the water and was drowned.
Okay, good job. So our objective today is to be able to predict the moral of the fables, so the moral lesson of the fables. So now that you have read this fable, I'm going to give you a couple of options, okay? So we're going to do a writing activity, and your first choice is you can write a retell. Do you know what a retell is?
Summing up what went on in the little fable?
Yes. And explain what the moral of the story was in this one, The Miller, His Son, and Their Donkey.
Mm-hmm.
Your second choice is you can write your own fable that teaches the same moral. So do you have an idea of what the moral was in this story?
Mm-hmm.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, so you get to choose either write a retell and explain the moral of the story, or write your own fable that teaches the same moral.
Retell what happened.
That's what you want to do?
Yes, and what the moral of the story was.
Okay, here you go.
I remember what happened. I can sum it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so can you read your retell?
The son and his father passed by many different kinds of people as they were riding with their donkey, in which each of them caused different problems. In the end, neither the son or father could please all the people and ended up suffering for it. The moral of the story was you can't please everybody, so do what you feel is the best choice.
Good job. So, fables are real easy to read, and sometimes it's a little bit harder to figure out what the moral of the story is. But if you read it over a second time, I'm sure you would be able to figure it out. So, this book that I have is Aesop's Fables. And he was a man who wrote all of these fables, and he lived a long time ago, around 600 BC. And so this is really old stuff that has lasted forever, and these morals, you can learn a lot from them. So remember that when reading a fable, you are trying to predict what the moral of the story is, or the main idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good job.